encampments, even as new ones are appearing at campuses across the country. While the police actions were unwelcome by protesters at UCLA, a very different story. Pro-Palestinian demonstrators there asking where were the police when they came under attack by pro-Israel activists. Aaron McLaughlin starts our coverage.
Tonight, police crackdowns continue on college campuses across the country. At the University of Wisconsin-Madison, clashes. 4 officers injured and dozens of pro-Palestinian protesters
To be here until our demands are met, no matter what.
They also want their voices heard.
But we just wanted to show that we're here and that we're not.
The University of Texas, Dallas, tents taken down. Meanwhile, Columbia University says it had no choice but to call the police.
Way onto the campus, dozens of officers.
Overnight, more than 100 were arrested on campus. Police releasing this video with no audio showing taking back control of the historic Hamilton Hall and the encampment.
I was terrified.
Student Mohammed Hameda says he was on campus during the raid to stand in solidarity with the protesters occupying the hall.
Whatever happened to our peers who were inside Hamilton, many of whom we know and are friends with, we wanted to make sure that we record what happened.
Hameda says police moved him and others into a dorm where he stayed for nearly 3 hours.
What I personally saw mainly was the NYPD officers in our face, and I saw students being dragged out of there in handcuffs, the blockade, the human chain that was outside of it being cleared.
The encampment, once full of protesters and tents, now cleared. Today, University President Manoush Shafiq explained what she called the police, saying the occupation of Hamilton Hall was destruction, not political speech, pointing to students who felt uncomfortable and unwelcome because of the disruption and anti-Semitic comments. Mayor Eric Adams says outside agitators co-opted the student protest.
We saw individuals holding doors. We saw individuals doing training. They were not students. They did not belong on the property, and they have a long history of participating in this type of discourse.
How many of those individuals were students, and how many of those individuals were so-called outside agitators?
But that's an analysis that's taking place right now.
Today off campus, faculty protested the police intervention, pointing to the police crackdown on the same hall in 1968.
It's clear that shared governance, meaning the capacity of faculty, students, and staff to interact with senior administration to come to resolutions of difficult problems is the lesson learned from 1968. That lesson was lost yesterday.
UCLA tensions between protesters boiling over as counter-protesters, some en masse, storm the pro-Palestinian encampment overnight. Violence erupting, videos show protesters fighting, some being pepper sprayed, and fireworks thrown into the encampment. Eventually, police and riot gear arrived, but made no arrests. Things have now calmed down here. Police were able to come and break up the fights between protesters, but there's a heavy police presence still here and a lot of tension on campus. As protesters spend their 7th day camped out, some students to move freely around campus have been
my ID right here. I'm being
spoken by Civis posted this video. Protesters not allowing him to access the encampment.
They created their own checkpoint entrance, and I saw this and I said, no, absolutely not. This is public land. I pay tuition here. I deserve to walk if I so choose to.
The incident condemned by the debate about the balance between free speech, university, and safety on campus. Yama is a pro-Palestinian protester who says she was pepper sprayed overnight.
They're saying that what we're doing is unlawful, but what I've seen in the encampment is that we are trying to be peaceful, and we are everyone is safe, and that our community members are protected in their right to protest.
By an NBC News, U.S. colleges and universities nationwide have encampments with students demanding their schools divest from Israel over the country. Places like Yale, Indiana University, and Arizona State. 2 schools, Brown and Northwestern, have reached preliminary agreements to de-escalate tensions. The unrest playing out in different ways on some campuses. This American flag at UNC put back in place and protected, in part by others, after protesters had replaced it with a Palestinian flag. It's all part of a decades-long history of protests on college campuses, helping to spark change over issues like the Vietnam War and South Africa's apartheid. Test has limitations.
There's robust First Amendment activities when it comes to expressive conduct, but there are limits, and one of those limits obviously is violence.
And Liz joining us now from UCLA, where classes were canceled today. Liz, what comes next there?
There's still a heavy police presence here, but so far they've stayed away from this encampment. This, though, is the university yesterday called the encampment unlawful and began telling students they were going to have to leave. Just moments ago, though, protesters here held a press conference saying they will not leave until their demands are met. And Lester, you might be able to see behind me, the students here are at the encampment fortifying it right now tonight. Lester?
All right, Liz.
The operation in Rafah without a plan to protect Gazans. A funeral today for 2 children killed in an Israeli raid.
We've not seen such a plan. And there are also better ways to do what Israel needs to do in terms of dealing with the remaining Hamas problem.
U.S. officials believe Netanyahu is threatening to go into Rafah to keep his ultra-conservative coalition together. But at the same time, there is enormous public pressure on him here to get those hostages home. Lester?
Obviously, bawling her eyes out. Getting that call and not knowing, are they going to make it? Is this going to be our last phone call? It's hard.
Police releasing little information, but confirmed there were no reports of injuries or death outside of the suspect.
The rifle recovered with the suspect.
The incident unfolding during students' gym class and recess. Rollerblades left behind as kids ran after hearing gunshots.
I made it a point when I dropped kids off at school to say I love you, because there's just a possibility that this would happen.
The school district writing on Facebook, "You would be so proud of our students and staff, and we're so grateful for our first responders." Tonight, this small community of just 8,000 people shaken but relieved as students across the district are slowly reuniting with their families. Lester?
All right, Maura Barrett, thank you. In New York today, Harvey reported tornadoes, including a deadly and destructive one in Kansas. Our Maggie Vespa is there.
Tonight, marking 7 straight days of reported tornadoes decimating America's heartland, with one late today appearing to touch down in Texas. Oh my God, it's blowing people's houses away! Meanwhile, new images of storms overnight with twisters tearing across Kansas and hail hammering Missouri, leaving a patchwork trail of destruction that continues to grow. Robin Knobloch's home survived, but her niece's house was heavily damaged.
Famous saying of the freight train, you could hear it in the wind. It was very loud. I fully expected our house to be gone the way it sounded.
13 tornadoes were reported overnight across Oklahoma and Kansas. Authorities in Westmoreland confirming 1 person was killed, nearly 24 homes destroyed.
I was born here. Yep. I was raised here. My kids were raised here.
It's the latest community caught in a broad sweep of violent weather, with more than 180 tornadoes reported. At least 6 people killed, including a 4-month-old girl. She was with her family inside their Oklahoma home Saturday when a tornado threw it 200 yards. The infant's mom telling NBC News, "We are heartbroken." And tonight, the threat continues, with 23 million Americans once again under severe weather threats, battering a swath of America already exhausted and weary of what's next.
Is that looming in your mind?
That's why we've been working hard all day to try to gather what's salvageable.
Maggie Vespa, NBC News, Westmoreland, Kansas.
In 60 seconds, the suspected ISIS member who crossed the border in this country. How could it happen? Next. We're back with our NBC News report on the terror concerns at the U.S. border. We've learned a suspected ISIS member not only crossed into the U.S. illegally, he was also living here for quite some time before anyone realized it. Here's Julia Ainsley.
Tonight, among the record wave of migrants crossing the southern border, a suspected ISIS member who lived freely in the U.S. for nearly 2 years. 2 U.S. officials tell NBC News. 33-year-old Jakavir Atoyev of Uzbekistan crossed into Arizona in February 2022, where he was apprehended and vetted by both Customs and Border Protection and ICE. He was not on the U.S. terror watch list, and he was released into the U.S., those sources tell us. Then, in May 2023, Uzbekistan put out an international alert, saying that Atoyev was affiliated with ISIS and wanted there. But it took nearly a year for U.S. officials to figure out the suspected ISIS member was living freely here in the U.S. U.S. officials tell us DHS made the alarming discovery after reviewing Atoyev's application for asylum. Shortly after DHS connected the dots, ICE arrested him here in Baltimore just 2 weeks ago. Former Homeland Security officials tell us his case raises red flags about the vetting process for migrants after they cross the border. Should alarm bells be going off here?
We are in the midst of a really volatile threat environment. Anytime I see a gap in a system like we are seeing in this case, I do have concerns. Anytime you have just a massive volume of people like we do, our systems are overwhelmed. We need more resources at the southern border to properly protect the homeland.
And it follows our exclusive report last month that a migrant U.S. officials say was affiliated with an Afghan terror group, crossed the border, and was released into the U.S. because agents lacked information to connect him to the terror watch list. That man, Mohammed Harwin, was arrested hours after our report aired. The FBI director recently alerted Congress the agency is investigating whether ISIS has a hand in smuggling migrants across the southern border.
There is a particular network that has where some of the overseas facilitators of the smuggling network have ISIS ties that we're very concerned about.
Two U.S. officials tell NBC News DHS has not yet concluded that Atoyev is part of ISIS, but they are questioning him in detention. A DHS spokesperson tells us he remains in U.S. custody and there is no threat to public safety. Lester?
All praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah. So we're going to look these scriptures up with Jeremiah chapter, we'll start at 31, chapter 40, chapter 50 and 31. 50 and 31. And it says, Behold, I am against thee, O thou most proud, said the Lord Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, God of hosts. For the day is come, the time that I will visit thee, and the most proud shall stumble and fall, and none shall rise him up. And I will kindle a fire in his cities, and it shall devour all about them. So like it shall devour all round about him. Thus said the Lord of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together. Okay, so this is why we see a lot of these, it was talking about the border, a lot of people's coming across that border, and the Most High is getting ready to bring judgment to Babylon. Okay, it said all that took them captives, all that took them captives held them fast. They refused to let them go. Their Redeemer is strong. The Lord, Yahweh Bashem Yahushua of hosts is his name. He shall truly plead their cause, that he may give rest to the land and disquiet the inhabitants of Babylon. A sword is upon the Chaldeans, said the Lord, and upon the inhabitants of Babylon, and upon her princesses, and upon her wise men. A sword is upon the liars, and they shall dote. A sword is upon her mighty men, and they shall be dismayed. A sword is upon their horses, and upon their chariots, and upon all the mingled people that are in the midst of her. You see that? And they shall become as women. A sword is upon her treasurers, and they shall be robbed. See that? So the Most High is about to get ready to visit Babylon. Okay. So I want to share that with you guys today. Remember to share the video. I'll be back with the next one. Peace.